Hello everyone, I'm Master of the Lemons, aka Lemmy.
And I'm here, the Japanese Train, aka Matt.
And welcome to Character Gallery. So today, we were hoping to get back to basics a little bit. The last episode was very interesting for me because I was pretty stumped for the early stages of it, trying to figure out how to talk about Bill and Ben. They're so lighthearted and comedically based. They don't have an ounce of drama in their bodies, really. And so it really just is not up my alley to do that type of character. But we did, and I was really happy with what we came up with, and I thought it was an interesting conversation. But I love drama, and I think today's episode is really going to get back to basics on that.
One thing we really wanted to do is tackle a villain. Like, not just a horrid lorries, like a real existential threat to the Northwestern Railway, to the steam engines, someone who has really come along and really has this, you know, he's on the front lines of dieselization. So this is somebody who is also really well beloved in the fandom. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of stories written about this character.
And it's Class 40. And it's interesting, I really do love Class 40, and I'm excited to talk about him because I think he might be, like, no one beats Diesel 10, of course, but Diesel 10's kind of in his own league. But we have this smaller subgroup of, like, three kind of other railway mainline diesels. We've got D199, we've got Old Stuck Up, and we've got Bowler. And I think all three of them are very different from each other, and have very different motivations and different personalities. And Class 40 I see as perhaps the one with the most personality, because I think
he's the most fun, I think, to play around with.
Yeah, I would agree, because out of all the characters we've ever had for Thomas, I don't think there's been a single one that was the epitome, the embodiment of a coward character. Because I think that's who Class 40 is. I think he's kind of a sniveling coward. If I had to describe him as something, that's how I would describe him. Just for the fact that he slinks out of the yard rather than apologizing to anyone or sticking up for his beliefs or anything. You know, he brags and says that he's better than everyone there. And then he breaks down at the first point of contention. Is put into the sheds, and then slinks out when no one's looking. So not only is he this bitter, seething racist towards steam engines, which a lot of diesels on the mainland are, but he's also a traitor to his own cause, because he leaves the island the minute the going gets tough, rather than trying to stick up for it further.
And that's what's interesting, because he's the one that's opening the door to the Fat Controller. He's the first, aside from, you know, Devious Diesel and whatnot, he's the first of these big mainline guys to really say, all right, here are the big guns.
He even predates Boko.
Right.
The only diesel of his size, really, that predates him is Daisy, and she's isolated to the Farquhar branch, so she's not
no
really
threat at all.
Yeah, it's like this. Class 40 is really the first real threatening big mainline diesel. You know, that's a big deal.
And I think it would be most important to Donald and Douglas. So, Donald and Douglas, the ones who have seen more than anyone else on the Northwestern Railway the horrors of being a steam engine on the mainland. By the time Class 40 arrives, I'm sure their first reaction that first night that he's here is, we gotta do something. So I thought it would be great. We all know the scene where he breaks down. We never see what's on the line parallel to Class 40. And we never know what force it would have taken to blow off the inspector's bowler hat.
Oh,
I feel like it would be
it's not the wind, it's the twins.
It's the twins wheeshing steam.
God, that would be really great.
And it sends the bowler hat into his air intake, and Class 40 is just, they snuff him out before he even has a chance.
That would be so great. You could tell a whole other story happening while Stepney's visiting about Class 40, and maybe the night before, Donald and Douglas confront the guy, and he accidentally gives up the information that, like, his air intake is a little too strong, and they're like, huh, okay. Like, I can just, wouldn't it be so great to see Donald and Douglas, the most practical, grounded, just, you know, they have so much integrity and humility, compared to Class 40, who is just, you know, he's just so full of hot air. I think it would be a funny scene, Because it's just, imagine the twins, they, come up face to face, and Class 40 would be kind of like dozing, right? And then he'd like open a sleepy eye and be like, oh, 2 kettles I see. What do you want? And, Donald and Douglas is just like, we want a word. And, and he's just like, oh, very well, but just don't get your soot on me. And, they just confront him on everything that he said earlier in the day. And like, Class 40 would be so unthreatened, he would think, like, there's no steam engine on Earth that could ever prove a threat to him, right? So, most engines, any smart engine on Sodor knows that if Donald and Douglas both come up to you and they have stern expressions, you should be scared, right? But
they'd like wee steam in his direction. He'd just be like, "Oh, you need your tubes cleaned." Ugh.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Filthy.
like, and he wouldn't take them seriously. And then the next day, they enact their plan. They whoosh steam, the hat flies off into his intake, and all it takes is a little gust of wind, because, I imagine that Bowler would, like maybe some workmen would be clearing out his intake or something at the moment, and he says something like, we diesels barely need any maintenance. And Donald's like, well, what's happening over there? And he's just like, that. Well, if you must know, my intake is being cleared. It's a perfectly, it's normal protocol, nothing more than that, right?
You wouldn't know, little steam engine, but,
yeah.
You have to keep the gears oiled, and you have to look your best, and I'm sure it's nothing that you'd be familiar with.
It would kind of be fitting if Class 40, like, it's not just that diesels have a problem with their air intakes, it's literally that Class 40 has a specific kind of medical concern. Like, he himself has a particularly bad intake that has to be cleaned quite frequently.
Well, what's funny is Class 40s in general were nicknamed whistlers because their engines would make a strange whistling noise. I feel like maybe you could amp that up. Maybe the air intake.
Yeah, maybe he's like one of the worst. Maybe he's one of the worst examples of this.
So he just goes around whistling all the time.
It's like you could kind of pair that with the fact that he's got kind of a high-pitched, whiny voice.
Yeah.
He's someone who maybe on the other railway. We'll get into, we'll justify why later, but say that he's in a high position of power on the other railway. He's greatly respected. He's highly respected enough that they send him to Sodor to kind of spread the mission of dieselization, right? He's one of their first picks. And so I like the thought of, like, imagining that Class 40 has to be the head of dieselization meetings on the other railway sometimes, but then he can't show up. His second in command has to be like, I'm terribly sorry, but Class 40 is having his intake looked at.
It's so great that he takes on the name of the whole class.
Yeah.
It's like, Class 40 will be there in a minute. Yeah. I'm imagining he's talking like the third person.
Yeah.
He's just getting his tubes clean. I'll be there. I'm tied up at the moment, but, give them my best.
Yeah. No, I could see him speaking that way. Why
do I feel like his second in command should be named? Why do I feel like it's Paxton?
Paxton. I don't know.
I don't know about that, but for some reason, I was watching Blue Mountain Mystery today, that's why.
I think Derek would make sense for some reason.
Derek would be cool. Imagine, you know why? Because two faulty diesels. Yeah,
like maybe this is turning into something, and I think we're also slowly sliding into the other railway section of this, which is really the meat of it. I understand that there are thousands of diesels in England at that time. But I like the idea of the ones I know talking to each other. So I'm just going to say Derek and Class 40 are in the same yard just to make that happen.
I mean, it's telling that these are the, it could just be a geographic thing. That these are the ones that are being sent to the Northwestern because they are also geographically in the vicinity.
Yeah, perhaps they're they're operating out of London or something, and not that engines would be likely to be shipped out of London. Like, it's not like the Queen herself is sending engines to Sodor from London or something.
We've said this before. We're willing to change all the bridges for Hank or not care about it. Yeah. This is such great story potential.
That's the thing. I just like the idea of Class 40 being a high-ranking diesel rooted in London, and like, so he has that level of prestige, because we all know London is just kind of viewed as a prestigious place. So it's, you know, associating him with that kind of feels right. So imagining, you know, that's why he's sent to Sodor, is because he's one of the higher-ranking diesels. But maybe he got there through unscrupulous means, like he stabbed a lot of backs, and he's really, like, he's a real politician. You know, like, I'm imagining Class 40 is just, like, the type which he'll shake your hand and smile, but stab you in the back the second he gets the chance, if it's going to get him a promotion. Like, ever since being built, that's been his MO. You know, he's been desperately trying to kind of weasel his way up the ladder until eventually he's been a highly respected diesel that's been respected by, like a name that is well known by definitely all of his class, but other diesels throughout England too. Like they're aware of him, and they're like, oh, he's one of the better examples of dieselization.
They'd have to look twice every time they saw a Class 40 to make sure it wasn't him.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that in mind, the notion that maybe he's a high-ranking diesel in this social structure, and that his name is kind of a bit of a household name, or a roundhouse name, if you will. For the engines, for all the diesels throughout Great Britain. I do really like the idea that Class 40, the second he runs into a hurdle, he gives up. If, say, him and his higher-up diesels are having a meeting, he's having intake troubles because of his unusually bad intake, and so he can't show up. Now, you know, a greater diesel than him would show up. Diesel 10 would just power through it and go to the meeting anyway, despite his health concerns. But Class 40's like, oh, I feel dreadful. I don't want to go. Will you go in my place, Derek? And Derek's like, I suppose I can.
And that would be funny too, because then neither of them would show up at half the meetings because Derek would break down halfway there.
Yeah, and Derek would actually try his best to get there, but he would legitimately break down. Whereas I think Bowler is like just kind of stuffed up. Like he doesn't want to go, and he wants an excuse not to go. He likes the idea of having power. He likes the idea of giving a speech to a roundhouse full of 10 diesels that all respect him. But he doesn't like the idea of having to show up and do his work, so he's just going to kind of make an excuse, and he does that, like, a lot, and everyone's kind of, on one hand, they're like, well, we all respect him, but on the other hand, they're like, well, but he never shows up, and he's kind of, like, bad at his job.
And then take a diesel like 199, then, who I imagine is also here. Like,
yeah, just throw him in there.
You know, I think at some point he would be like, all right, you know what? Fine, I'm the leader.
Yeah, no, I've thought that myself as well. I was writing something that took place on the other railway like a year or two ago, where I was kind of fitting all these diesels into the story. And, you know, it involved Diesel 10 and Class 40 and D199 and 7101. And at some point, I think my explicit vision was that D199 would usurp Class 40 and ruthlessly kind of take his power from him and become, you know, take his place. I always kind of look at it like, in Britain, Diesel 10 is kind of this really highly respected and feared urban legend that kind of is the top dog when it comes to dieselization.
Diesel 10 is like the chief patriarch.
Yeah,
it feels
I would
like.
say, of this whole dieselization thing. And then under him, you've got his right-hand man. And I think for a while that might be Class 40.
I imagine it would be a cabal of even more diesels than we've seen in the show.
Yeah, no, there would have to be like hundreds in this sort of high command, right?
Yeah.
But I just for fun, we'd make all the highest ranking ones the ones we know about because it's more interesting that way. And I think like it could be that Class 40's Diesel 10's right-hand man. And then eventually you've got him usurped by D199, who actually has more of a will, who's actually a little bit more, he's got way more
who actually manages to pull the train on Sodor.
Yeah, like D199, you know, at least gets to the train, even if he does break down. And you could even say that maybe he breaks down because he took on too much. Like, that train of tankers was just unreasonable, and he was so focused on proving himself that he ran himself into the ground.
Yeah.
But Class 40 just gave up. Like, that's the equivalent. I mean, when a diesel breaks down before even taking their train, you know, when you personify that action, that's just them giving up. It's like when Gordon stops on the hill with all his trucks and says, I can't do it. He doesn't, you know, he says he can. What he really means is, I don't want to, I hate trucks. And likewise, when Class 40 breaks down, he's kind of being like, oh, it's too difficult. That train is so big. I don't want to. It's like, it's just so, he's such a sniveling, just like, he's a real lazy, kind of cowardly character, I feel, who really likes the idea of getting other people's admiration and respect, but doesn't want to work for it. And, you know, I think that would definitely carry to his life on the mainland.
What's funny is his attitude alone probably would have gotten him sent away from the island by the Fat Controller. Because, you know, Derek gets to go ahead. Derek gets to stay.
Yeah, and Derek breaks down, but he tries, right? He helps pull the train, but then he becomes a nuisance, right? He breaks down on the train, and Bill and Ben have to pull him. But he's trying, and he feels bad about it. And the Fat Controller could see that in his eyes and think, oh, Derek, all right, you get to stay.
Yeah.
But Bowler's totally unapologetic. I bet when he breaks down, he's blaming the workmen, he's blaming the Fat Controller, he's blaming Duck and Stepney, he's blaming everyone else, and saying, oh, well, you did this, and you did that, and...
Bowler hats aren't even in style anymore. What are you doing? It's the 1960s.
Exactly. You know,
get yourself a nice top hat like the Fat Controller. It's a top hat to you. Send him away.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he really would just, you know, he would be pointing fingers and making insults and just generally being just a jerk. That alone would get him sent away. And I think that's really who Bowler is. You know, that's his personality. He wants the easy way at any cost. And, you know, he'll stab people in the back to get it. He will tell lies to get it. He will just weasel out of any situation in order to give himself an easier, more luxurious, more pampered life. I think that's the type of character he is.
What's great is that probably ends up to him shortening his own lifespan, because in 1973, D261 was repainted into rail blue and renumbered to 40061, and then was withdrawn in 83, and then scrapped in March of 84. When I was like 14, and this is coming to me now, I started to write this story about, for some reason it was Gordon or Henry, but it can be whomever. Some engine on the Northwestern is going by a scrapyard on the mainland, and it's D261 in the siding, all rusted up and withdrawn. And he's just like, oh, long time no see.
It really does beg the question, like, if Class 40 was in that situation, what he would try to do to get himself out of it. I could see him somehow negotiating getting a train to Sodor, and then begging everyone to, like, put in a good word for him. And, you know, they all have to have a meeting. You know, they all go to Tidmouth Sheds. And Class 40 is just waiting awkwardly outside. And he's just like, oh God, oh God, oh God, I hope they say yes, I hope they say yes. And Gordon's just like, we can't take him back. How could we? I mean, he was disgraceful to us when we last saw him. And, you know, James is like, quite right, Gordon. We don't want another diesel on this railway anyway. Looks around awkwardly. Of that caliber. And
the Poco's right there.
Yeah.
It's nothing I haven't heard before, James.
And, you know, and maybe, and the twins are like, absolutely not. We did our very best to get him sent away the first time. And there's like a unanimous, what? And they're just like, did we not tell you about that? I kind of like the idea that maybe Thomas or Percy is there. Just like the whole family's there, right? Even engines that aren't allocated there. And maybe Percy chimes in and he's like, but he's going to be scrapped otherwise, guys. And everyone just like looks a little bit guilty and is like, well, so be it. And then Edward's like, Gordon. And Gordon's just like, well,
what's worse, one of him or 78 of my brothers?
Oh, God. He would say it, though. I think at that point, though, like, we're in the 80s. Everyone kind of grown a little bit. They'd be like, God damn it, Gordon, don't pull that card. Like, brought up your brothers like 30 times. We know it's terrible, but at the same time, like...
You know what's funny is that's right around the time that Old Stuck-Up comes to visit.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that Class 40 is Old Stuck-Up.
That's what I was thinking, like... Because Old Stuck-Up is also another real-life one.
Yeah, he's got a real number. Well, that would... I honestly like the idea more of Class 40 kind of pathetically crawling back and trying to convince everyone and really just, like, being...
It would be funny, too, because he's just, like... I could see him, like... sneaking awkwardly into, like, the middle of a goods train.
Yeah. Yeah,
like,
I could see that.
Sticking out like a sore
and he would be making all these, like, pathetic noises. He'd just be like, He's like just marshaling trucks around, and he's like, "Yeah, we go. Oh, there we go." And he's like just
whistling really loudly.
Yeah. And like everyone in the yard, he thinks he's being covert. He's not. Everyone in the yard can see him doing it, but they're just so horribly embarrassed for him that they just let him do it anyway. Like even the I'm imagining the controller of the railway is visiting, and he sees it, and he can do something, but he's just like, "Oh, that's absolutely pathetic. I can't involve myself in that. I wish I hadn't seen that." And and Bowler's just like, "I've done it! I fooled them all!" And everyone there...
"I've made a daring escape!" Oliver passes by.
It would be so utterly just pathetic that everyone there would it would be so pathetic that they'd all let it happen out of pity. And he ends up on Sodor. And I think, honestly, this would be... I think, in a weird way, Bowler's finest moment would be when he comes back to Sodor to grovel with everybody, because I think...
I could very well see him ending up on the Northwestern.
Yeah, because I think he would actually succeed. I think he would actually convince everyone. And, slowly... everyone knows that he had this, high-ranking position on the other railway, but no one quite, for years it's been an in-joke. Engines like Gordon and Henry have just been like, "I don't understand how he's so respected over there. My God, he's pathetic. Broke down on the first day." And they all chuckle, right? But then when Bowler comes back and tries to convince them all that he should stay on the Northwestern Railway, they slowly start to see how he became so high-ranking on the other railway. Because he's very convincing. He's very good at kind of, buttering someone up and groveling and making them actually kind of feel so bad for him that they give him power.
Yeah. You know what'd be great is I'm imagining, so this scene is it's nighttime, it's thunderstorming out, and they finally open the doors to the shed and let him in onto the turntable.
Yeah, he's just soaking wet. It's rain is just pouring off of him, and he's like, "Yeah, please."
He doesn't even come in. They have to drag him onto the turntable.
Yeah,
and then
it would be so funny. You would just be sitting there drenched with rain, and then James would be like, "Well, come in here," and then he's like, I can't. My intake has failed," and everyone groans unanimously. They're like, "God damn it! All right, someone pull him in." And then Gordon and Henry have to pull him in. They're like, "God, why is he so heavy?" And then they finally drag him in, and he's like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." He'd be kissing their feet if he could.
Yeah.
And Gordon's just like, "Why don't you just shut up?
You're all very clean and shiny, and I love you all." Well, it would be funny is they come in and Duck is like, "Not bad. Oh, you seen worse?"
It would be so Duck too. He would be like, that's an example of his classic wit, where it's a very understated but very meaningful kind of, berating of somebody.
Well, and then wouldn't it be great if, after all this happens, it's still, midnight. The Fat Controller comes in his pajamas, and he's like, "I haven't been able to sleep for 2.5 hours because I've heard of all the noise. What is going on?" And he sees him there, and he's like, "Oh my goodness." and then Class 40 makes this groveling "Oh please, I want to be your favorite engine. I want to be your #1. And no offense at all, Thomas. And then the Fat Controller, after
I'm just imagining Thomas's face when he says that. He would just be utterly such a face of disgust and threat. He would just be like, "What?"
Well, and then there'd be total silence, and the Fat Controller is just like, "If I choose you, will you work hard?"
Oh. Yes, of course, sir. I absolutely will, sir.
"What colour would you bloody well like?"
Everyone in the whole room rolls their eyes. They're like, "Damn it! How did he manage this?"
Why do I feel like he would get he wouldn't get a standard color. He would get something really outlandish.
I have to wonder what his style is. Why do I picture that Bowler is a snappy dresser?
Why am I picturing that he would get a bright blue, or he would get a yellow or a pink or a purple?
Yellow would be the color of cowardice. I think that would really suit him.
I think just all yellow.
I wonder if he would opt to change his color, maybe back to green.
Because he would arrive there in rail blue.
Yeah, he would be all dirty and dusty, and he would look terrible. It would be so ironic, right? Because the same engines. Because when Bowler says, "Not bad, I've seen worse. At least you're all clean," he's what the implication there that he's not saying is that all the engines on BR, the steam engines he usually sees, are caked in dirt,
filthy. Yeah,
like, and they really were. Like, they were just covered in black soot. It was awful. And on Sodor, Bowler's genuinely surprised. He's like, "Oh, how are you all so clean?" And this would then be the case when Bowler comes to the island and he's caked in soot because now the railway doesn't care about him. And in a weird way, he'd be kind of baptized by the storm because the rain would come over him and wash off all the soot as the engines are deliberating in the sheds. And when they open the light on him, he's clean, you know, just like he always wanted to be.
Well, and then what would be great is his... You know, then he gets to meet all the other engines. Like, Derek had gotten there like 15 years before he did.
That's true.
The Works diesel would probably drag him to Crovan's Gate to get repaired and everything and repainted. And he'd be like, wow, you know, all the diesels here are so nice. That's how they were allowed to stay.
Yeah. And if he knew Derek all those years ago, if Derek really did play that assistant role for him or something, then maybe Derek's broken down in the Works. And the Works diesel pulls Bowler in, and he sees Derek there right when he's having that thought of like, everyone here is so nice. I suppose that's why they're all here. And then he stops in the Works and he sees Derek and he's like, "Derek? But I don't understand. How are you?" And he like thinks to himself and he's like, "I guess he was really nice, wasn't he? I always kind of ignored that. I just made him go to all my meetings. I never really thought about who he was as a person."
You know what would be great is if Derek is not Derek until after he reaches the island and he's Paxman before.
Yeah, that would be cool. And it's also a little bit more intimidating of a name, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like how, like in Cars 2, you've got the family names of Trunkov, Hugo, Gremlin, Pacer.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not really their names, but they're like, you've got the heads of the families. And likewise, you've got like, say, maybe Class 40 is called Class 40, because he's kind of the head of all the Class 40s. He's their representative.
Then you just have Paxman.
Yeah, who is the representative of maybe all Paxman diesels, not just the Class 17s or whatever he is. And you know, that would be kind of interesting.
That would be so nice because he'd be like, "Paxman? Oh, I didn't know you were still here." And he'd be like, "Well, it's Derek now, but it's good to see you. I thought you'd have been, you know, worse than I was." And but then it would be really great because then I could really see a moment when Old Stuck Up arrives. Like that would be before Old Stuck Up. And Old Stuck Up comes. This is Old Stuck Up is like in his last years in service, and Class 40's like, I don't want to call him Old Stuck Up. I'll call him, what is it, 4125. He's like, 125. You can't do anything to screw this up. This is your last bloody chance. And he's just like, "Oh, I'll be fine."
Bowler is finally showing that practicality and that understanding for the first time in his life. Now that he's on Sodor, and he's like, "No, you don't understand, you actual idiot. You need to prove yourself to these engines. You will be scrapped over there." And he's just like, "We're not going to be scrapped. Please."
They've gotten to your air intake, haven't they?
A lot of things have gotten into my air intake lately. A lot of things. It's like,
don't think we forgot about your air intake on the mainland.
And Bowler's just like, I think he'd throw his hands up and be like, "You know what? Fine. Do what you've been doing. Goodbye." And then you know, and so 125 is like, "Thank you, I will." And he pulls out of the Works. And then Derek pulls in while he's pulling out. And he's like, "Why do you look so smug? Oh God, he's gonna die. You need to convince him." And, it's like, and Bowler's just like, "I wash my hands of it." And Derek's just like, "Good God, we gotta convince him." And it's but it's too late, and 125 makes an ass of himself and dies, and that's
crowd. Yeah, well, that I'm thinking that it would be like he was tasked to show him around as like his brother.
Yeah,
you know? But then he gives up and gives the task to Boko.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great? That's a really good.
It's like, fine, he's your problem now. I can't believe I was just like him.
Yeah, and Boko's just like, "Oh, God damn it. All right, fine. Let me show you around." And, you know, but like, I love that idea because it shows that Bowler hasn't changed as a character, but like he has in the important ways, but he's still not a different person. Like, you know, Bowler has learned that he was a very arrogant, you know, overinflated ego character back then, right? But at the same time, he still doesn't have patience, and he still doesn't have a great capacity for self-sacrifice. So even his own brother, when he shows up, if he infuriates him, he's just going to give up and just drop it and just leave, even though he could do a lot to convince old Stuck-Up to stay and save his own life. Bowler's not really going to do that. He's like, look, I've learned a lot of empathy in the last 5 years. I really don't have room for any more. Can I just go and take a nap already? You know, like, he would become a better person.
On some level, he'd probably have this really callous, you know, because, again, he's the pariah.
That's true. After
bowled out and everything, you know, all the other Diesels, even if they still let him at the meetings, they're going to make fun of him relentlessly.
Yeah, I imagine that before, he used to chair the meetings. You know, he was on the turntable spinning around, looking at all the other Diesels in the shed, talking about the game plan for dieselization in the center of London. And now, you know, and then after bowled out, he comes back, he's a laughingstock. Everybody, you know, he's a total pariah, and I imagine he has to, like, leave his yard. He goes from, like, yard to yard pulling goods trains, he's all dirty.
He loses that green color.
Yeah, he begs, like, you know, diesel shunters in yards even to, like, let him sleep in their sheds, and they're like, alright, fine, get in the back.
He'd be, like, half sticking out.
Yeah, he's like, there's not enough room in here, and then the shunter would just be like, well, it was built for us, what do you expect? And he's just like, oh, the rain starts, oh! This would be even funnier if he has two faces, because he can't even go face first into the shed. One end of him is totally in the rain, and he's like, oh, it's getting on my face. It's like, it would just be so, like, I would just love to see, I think that really is... That is the sequel to Bowled Out. It's you open with something like that, where you see
he returns to the turntable, and they're like, "How's it going, Bowled Out?"
Yeah, they all laugh at him, and he's just like, he's totally embarrassed, and he's like, well, I'll show you guys. I'll go and start my own club, and he leaves, and they all just laugh at him.
That would be funny, is if they the workmen, like, spray paint Bowler on him.
Oh, God.
Like, right, you know, like, the kick me sign, and then they, like, send him out the door. I could
see that. He's thinking, okay, the few people that still serve me are the workmen, so I can insult them and take out all my anger on them, because I can't do it on my brothers anymore. He really just doesn't learn. It takes him he's a stupid Diesel. I'm imagining Bowler's not smart. He's stupid. He's very good at manipulating people and groveling. Those are the things he's good at.
He's good at manipulating people who don't know better.
Yeah, but he's not. But if somebody actually has an ounce of self-respect, they're not going to follow him. Which is why I'm sure that his council, you know, when he's kind of the, you know, he's the leader on the turntable, it's probably a bunch of engines that don't have a lot of self-esteem. Like that's why Derek would work for him, right? Is because Derek doesn't, like, have a lot of confidence. Yeah. So he's gonna... You know, he's going to listen to him. Whereas, and
it helps that he's never showed up to any of the meetings. So I think if he went there, he would have worsened his image.
It's basically like Derek is the mouthpiece for him. He shows up to like 2 meetings out of 20 every year, and so Derek tells everyone. They're like, "What is our leader like exactly, Derek?" Well, he's very brave. He's very kind. He really cares about dieselization. And they're
He's green.
Very green. Very, very green. Incredibly green. And they're all just like, okay. Well, I like green diesels. And then when Class 40 finally shows up to one of them, they're like, oh, this guy's not what I expected at all. You know, he's kind of a coward.
I was expecting more of a British Railways green. This is more of a Great Western almost.
I was not expecting this. And like, there's all this mumbling, and Bowler's just like turns to Derek, and he's just like, stop them! Make them stop! They're being rude to me, make them stop! And Derek's just like, I can't really, I've been defending you for the last 17 years. Yeah, he just breaks down right there on the turntable. He's like, damn it, you see what you've done? You should have defended me, Derek. I've broken down now. And, and Derek's just like, okay, everyone, take 5, let's...
we'll take it from the top.
But like, that would just be so... I see Bowler as such a funny character, because I think it's just... When he comes across anything that is a conflict to him, he just gets sad and breaks down, and he's like, oh, God damn it, where is me? Oh, this world.
What's funny is that then he doesn't really have much contact with any of these other Diesels. Like, even 199. Like, 199 probably has rarely met the guy.
Yeah.
By the time that he's like, you know what? I see a power vacuum here that I can exploit.
Yeah, it's almost like D199's like, I never actually see this D261 fellow. Seems to me like there might not even be one. And everyone in the shed's like, yeah, he's right, yeah.
But you know what there is one of? There's a peak. There's a peak here who's going to peak this movement.
And they all be like, yeah, that's right. Oh, that was a little cheesy, but and they're all like, but he would like D199 could actually genuinely rile everyone up, right? And so Derek is on the other end of the sheds, really sweating, like, oh my god, D261 isn't going to like this. Excuse me, 199, could you please not be so rude?
Could you please not take over the movement? I don't think our fearless leader would like that.
Yes, I don't know if D261's heart can take it. I don't know if he's really in a place to deal with a revolution right now.
Well, then he shouldn't have been a revolutionary to begin with.
And there's just kind of a ooh in the sheds, and Derek backs out, like he's like and like the funny thing would be Bowler is just a coward. He doesn't like conflict. But Derek genuinely, like, when he says, like, it wouldn't be good for Bowler, his heart can't take it.
Yeah, he's talking about himself.
Exactly. And so Derek breaks down on the spot, and it's like, oh! But it's not like Bowler. When Bowler breaks down and has a fit,
he's black smoke everywhere.
Yeah, like Bowler, it's like, oh, woe is me. Derek, it's like, works, fitter, someone please, and, they have to send someone in. So it's really sad, right? Because Derek is actually he's trying to support his friend, and he's trying to do the best that he knows how. And he's supporting a movement he doesn't fully understand, and that he's kind of forced into. And he is suffering more than Bowler is. Bowler sends him to his meetings in his place, and probably makes Derek pull a lot of his trains, too. Bowler breaks down.
Wearing out his engine even more.
Yeah, it's like, Derek... Oh god, what if that's why? What if it's literally...
That's why Derek has his overheating problem.
Yeah, because he's been working for Bowler so long. Bowler's been making him do his work and his own work. And so he's just totally worn out his engine. And finally, I think you'd have an arc on Sodor where Bowler finally realizes he has to apologize to Derek for everything he's put him through. I'm imagining...
That would be great, because then I'm imagining it'd be like the umpteenth time that Derek has broken down.
Yeah.
And really embarrassed himself. Like, Derek is not given a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
And he's in the works again, and, Class 40 slinks in, and everyone else is like, okay, we better give him some space. They all leave.
It's like, maybe Derek has told everyone a lot more than Bowler realizes about his treatment on the other railway, and he's never been cruel to Bowler. He's never made fun of him once, but he's been kind of like, he's just described accurately how he was treated on the other railway, and it just sounds really bad. It's like, Derek's like, oh yes, well, he made me do all of his work, and go to all of his meetings, and yelled at me a lot, but he's a nice guy, really, he's a very nice guy. And Gordon's just like, it doesn't sound like it. And Henry's just like, that sounds absolutely dreadful. I'm so sorry, Derek.
I mean, he's a nice guy. He's pretty green.
All the engines just look at each other like, okay. Oh, that always used to work back in the meetings. But like, it would, they would finally get to the point. I think it would be like, I could really see Boko administering some tough love to a lot of the diesels who haven't got the picture yet on Sodor. And Bowler's one of them, where he kind of visits Bowler and he's like, I think you should go and talk to Derek and finally apologize to him. Apologize to him? What do you mean? For making him do all your work, perhaps? But he agreed to do all of that, now didn't he? It was all on him, and I think... No, hold on. Stop right there. Listen to me. You need to go apologize to him immediately. You are his equal on this railway. He does not work for you. You treated him terribly, and he still sticks by you to this day. You have no choice but to apologize to him for everything you've done.
But Boko...
No but Boko about it.
I've got a train to pull, and...
Oh, I'm sure you do. I'll take it for you. How about that?
Oh, wait a minute.
And it like you would pull some trick on him like that, or just guilt him into it really badly. And Bowler's good at.
You know what would be great is like, oh, would you take this train to Crovansgate, please? And then Poco, he's like, here, I'll double-head it with you. And then they bring it there, and then rather than letting Class 40 go, he's like, oh, is your intake sounding all right? What? I feel fine. And it's like, oh, no, we'd better take you to the works.
No, wait, I know where this is going. Please, no, I don't want to face my problems, no.
Door slam.
Wouldn't it be funny if Boko was at the back of the train, too? So Bowler, once he sees Derek off in the works, he's like, oh no, and he tries to take off with the train and go further to Barrow, but Boko slams on his brakes, and he's like, nope. It's the equivalent of standing there with your arms folded. And he's just like, no, please. And Boko's just like, go and talk to him now. And eventually he has to. But I could just so see that. That would be so great. And then Bowler would finally apologize to Derek. And the thing is, I don't think that Bowler's like has a problem with apologizing. I don't think it's hard for him to say sorry.
No, he's done a lot of it to get on Sodor.
Yeah, it's so easy for him. It's just only when it's advantageous, though. He doesn't have to apologize to Derek. There's no benefit for him. It's all for Derek. He's very willing to apologize when it benefits him, but it doesn't benefit him in this scenario.
He's willing to apologize aside from when it means that he knows that he's in the wrong.
Yeah, and he doesn't. Usually an apology holds no weight to him and means nothing. So apologizing for something he actually believes was wrong is a first when he does it for Derek, and it's really difficult for him, and it's a real period of growth. When Bowler is first, where the engines are like, fine, we'll take you back, we'll let you live on the Northwestern Railway, and he's like, oh, thank you. When that happens, right, I think in the back of their heads, they understand that Bowler doesn't mean it. He's just trying to save his own life. He's not really apologizing. But they know that eventually Bowler will be in a position where, due to the nature of Sodor, he will learn his lesson eventually. And Bowler doesn't get that part. He thinks he's fooled them with his fake apology. He hasn't. They're just biding their time until eventually he learns his lesson. And he learns it when he apologizes to Derek. And Boko's instrumental in that. And Derek finally gets the apology that he deserves. And when that happens, Bowler finally knows what it is like to be selfless. And slowly gets on the right track.
It's like an Ebenezer Scrooge moment.
Very much so, I would say.
I'd imagine he'd go frolicking around the island saying, like, I'm sorry to all the engines.
Yeah, like he finally gets it. He's like, I didn't understand empathy until this very moment, and it's a wondrous thing. And it's like, he would just like, it would change the way he looked at things.
It'd be so funny, because he'd be like going around the island saying, I'm sorry! Then he'd find like Molly in a siding, and he'd be like, I'm sorry! And she's like, who are you?
My God.
Oh, I don't know. You just looked like you needed someone to apologize to you.
Oh my God. I really did. Thank you. but like, yeah, I think that's totally how things would go with him. It's interesting. It's like, at the beginning of this, I did think we might toy with the idea of Bowler coming to Sodor, but I really didn't think we'd embrace it as fully as we did.
I thought that we just let him die, honestly.
Yeah. Well, because that's generally what I do as a rule, is like, I think, if a visitor comes to Sodor, I'm not a big fan of the trope where they're brought back and, then all of their, there's no gravity to the fact that they're sent back to the mainland. It's like, well, if they're sent back anyway, if they come back to Sodor anyway, then why did it matter that Bowler failed? He was safe in the end. There was no gravity. There was no real consequences. But I also really like Bowler, so I kind of want him on Sodor.
I think that Bowler's in a unique position, too, because he's not... After the whole bowled out situation, he can't really reintegrate into that. And,
yeah,
199 I wouldn't see keeping around. We got Bear out of that. That arc concluded. But Bowler never really did conclude.
Yeah, I think because Bowler never said goodbye. And once he finally comes back to actually talk to the engines again, you realize the goodbye is more of a please let me stay. And and that's the thing. But D199, he was bitter till the end. He didn't believe in the Northwestern's principles and despised all the engines and genuinely wanted to take over. I think Bowler does have, deep down, I think Bowler's main flaw isn't that he's really bitter or evil in any sense. I think it's that he's just really, really scared of dying and really, really scared of being insignificant. And those things they shake him to his core to the point where he has...
To the point where he starts acting against those own goals without realizing it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's got a very, 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 way too strong sense of self-preservation. I think the reason the first thing Bowler says the engines on Sodor is, we diesels are perfect, we're the best, is because he's kind of trying to convince himself. But deep down, he's very, very aware of his own mortality. He's the type of character who, if he was human, he'd be a total germaphobe. He would just be totally terrified of any threat, right? Any risk to his own mortality. And that's why he does everything that he does. That's why he stabs people in the back. That's why he's so selfish, why he thinks about himself. He's scared, very scared, just because he's a natural-born coward. And once he finally comes to Sodor and works through all of his more selfish traits, that cowardice isn't a problem. It's almost endearing. It's a part of him.
There's so much more depth here, too, having him here, because Diesel 10 is on the island,
Yeah, that's true.
Like, at some point, like...
Literally, the Grand Master Diesel, Master of Dieselization, is present on the island, too. And they'd have very interesting, different Reformation stories that are different from each other. Bowler I think it's not too hard for Bowler to reform, honestly. I think because he's on Sodor now and he's safe. The minute he has safety, well, it all goes away. It's like, yeah, he doesn't really have to fend for himself.
And as a small note, I do like that it kind of justifies all of Bowler's numerous later appearances in the magazines on the Northwestern.
yeah, that's true. Oh my god.
But yeah, I mean, then he... I feel like there was always something missing with the Diesels on Sodor. Because he's such a character to have on the Northwestern. And not only that, that he still dredges up a lot of the memory of dieselization. This, like, uncomfortable past. But he's reformed.
He's a bit like a reformed war criminal, where it's like, he can never really truly apologize for the things that he did. In his kind of this dark past, he's in a lot of really bad photographs, and everyone knows it. but at the same time, they're like, okay, but he's good now.
He's a more serious version of the Grinch who stole everyone's Christmas.
yeah.
I think it would be really awkward the first time he met Diesel 10 on Sodor.
Yeah,
Diesel
really
10 would be like, you're here?
Especially if he met him in front of other steam engines, because his gut feeling would be to grovel to Diesel 10 and kiss his ring. But then also, that would look really bad. So he'd be like caught. He'd be like, oh, Diesel, you villainous hero of mine. He wouldn't know what to do. And, Diesel 10 would be like, just stop. Okay, we'll do.
Will do, sir. I mean, Your Majesty.
Oh my god. But yeah, no, I think that I think that wraps up what makes Bowler so great. And I think, despite his very brief appearance, I think that he has a lot of character in his appearance, and it's why so many people remember him.
This is one character that, through one story, I feel like there are infinite stories to write about.
Yeah, because I think his way of dealing with the world is so erratic that it's like he will end up in a lot of different places. He'll do anything it takes to survive, and so he's constantly moving around, constantly taking the next opportunity.
It also shows how much his dieselization stint was really a flash in the pan.
Yeah, because it's like, it was just the thing at the time that he could use to boost his own ego and his own importance. But, like, if it was steam pride, he would have used that instead. Like, he really has no real principles until he actually gets to Sodor and apologizes to Derek and learns his lesson. His whole thing has been survival. And once he gets to Sodor, he can actually figure out what he actually believes in, not just what will get him to his next position of power. And I think that's a really big thing in his life.
Yeah, the biggest learning curve is him realizing that power isn't what's going to keep him alive.
Yeah, it's compassion, and it's treating others. It's if you treat others well, they will treat you well. And that's something he's never really had. He's the reason he had a lot of what he had was because he stumbled upon Derek, who was one of the most compassionate characters of all time. And I think he'd realized that. I think that's why apologizing to Derek would be such a big chapter in his story, is because he would realize, wait a minute, what I was assigning to power before power was not the thing keeping me alive. It was Derek.
It was Derek.
Yeah, it was the fact that somebody had compassion for me. So I must have compassion for everyone else. I get it now. And Derek's just like, I'm very proud.
He'd be really uncomfortable those first few weeks. He'd be like, oh, because he also overdoes everything.
Yeah.
Like, he would go up to Thomas and be like, "Oh, you're looking splendid today, Thomas. Hello."
Yeah, he would just be so uncomfortable. He'd be like, "How about leave me alone? I gotta go. Annie, Clarabelle, hurry!" Like, they just get out of there quickly. He's like, "No, come back! I have more compliments that I've written down." It's like, but yeah. Anyway,
man, we really got a lot here.
Yeah,
and I hope that this sparks some inspiration to you guys, because you know, the entire time I have, you know, ever since I first saw Bolt Out, I always wanted him, like, when I would play with trains as a kid, he always came back as a villain. In fandom content, he always comes back as a villain. But then the reform arc is something I don't even think either of us considered until just now.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about bringing him back to Sodor, but I always believed that Bowler, if he did come back to Sodor, I think Bowler would do whatever leads to his survival in the moment. And so in that way, I don't think Bowler is a villain. I think he's kind of a blank slate. He does whatever his environment requires of him. And in this situation, once he comes to Sodor, becomes a good guy. You know, he kind of adapts to whatever life is like around him, and that's what that necessitates. So, you know, I think it's very interesting to see how he acts in different circumstances, because his real core personality traits are more like laziness, cowardice, you know, general irresponsibility. You know, it's
manipulation.
Yeah, manipulation, and you know, but it's like it's interesting because he's not really a big bad. You know, he's more like pathetic, and I think that's why he survives so long. Right,
and that's he gets swept up in everything, but then he's able to be discarded so easily.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we've said our piece on him. I mean, that's I really love all these ideas for sure.
I think we bowled a strike on this one for sure.
Yeah. Yes, we've bowled a strike. All right. Well, without further ado, I've been Master of the Lemons, a.k.a. Lemmy.
And I'm HiroTheJapaneseTrain, a.k.a. Matt.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
See you in the next one.